I understand passion. I get it. I'm one of those that have these great ideas and I have to run with them. But I would say that the first thing is validate your market through the mom test, sell your product, and then build your product. Worst case scenario, if you sell it, you can't deliver. That's not a bad situation. Um, Worst case scenario, if you build before you sell, now you have a product that you can't sell, and now you're going out of business and you lost a bunch of money. So I think the earlier is probably a better choice. So validate your market, sell, and then build your product.
Hey guys, today our guest is Jake Strack. He's a COO and co-founder at miingl. And Jake, please introduce yourself and tell us what you guys are working on.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Jake Strack, born and raised here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we are working on an interactive face-to-face platform for virtual events. So essentially taking the real world, what you would experience when you walk into a room, and making it a two-dimensional representation of that in a simplistic way, instead of having to make you build an avatar or slide a token around or something like that. We've created a click to cluster technology that is unique. Nobody else has it. And it allows you to cluster with people, talk to them face to face, and see who's clustering with who, and join those clusters or go build your own. It's a really fun, exciting project, and it's been in the works for quite some time. We launched in September, and we have close to 2,000 users now, and we're starting to get that traction and starting to see some results from our hard work and dedication.
Yeah, and I really love your product. I had a chance to play around with it. You actually gave my partner and me the presentation on why is it so cool and why is it better than platforms like Zoom or Google Meet. So could you walk us through the difference and why miingl makes the networking sessions or things like that online feel like it's kind of like in real life?
Yeah, no problem. We do tend to like to stay away from the comparison with Meets or Zoom, because we're kind of a different breed. When you've got a new technology, you do tend to use comparisons in order to help people conceptualize and understand what they're seeing. But right now, if it comes down to just having a general meeting with people, the features and the feature sets you've got on Meets and Zoom are going to probably take care of it. What we're really focusing on and narrowing in on is those meetings where you have the opportunity to really build camaraderie with people and really connect. It's a very engaging meeting. So we can replace Zoom and Meets, but the feature sets aren't necessarily the same at the moment. So the differences between the two is when you're in a Zoom meeting, you've got 20 people in there, and the two loudest people are kind of talking at each other. And most everybody else is disengaged. They're checking their emails. They're trying to pay attention, or they turn off their camera altogether and they're just listening to it in the background. And it's not really an engaging event. What we're looking for is to create that connection that you get from the real world. So when you're in the real world, you walk into a room and you're going to see different clusters, and you're going to join those clusters. You're going to build your own by connecting with an individual. Ours is very similar. It's a self-driven kind of clustering, and a face-to-face video conference that you can get into with individuals and with different clusters. And that way you can actually have this face-to-face conversation like you and I are having now, that you wouldn't get to have if there were 20 people in the room and the two loudest are talking at each other. So think about it like self-directed breakout rooms, where you're not getting shoved into a breakout room with a bunch of people you don't know and essentially just talking at those people. You actually get to choose who you're connecting with. and you get to get inspired by their connections. So there's really three main differences: is that click to cluster technology that allows for that real world networking feel. And then when you're on a webinar on our application, so if I'm doing a presentation, the audience is listening live, I can see the audience and I can see them respond. If I say something funny or if they're nodding their heads, I can see the engagement, which actually ups my presentation ability. I can share my screen, do all those kind of things. But what's really cool is our call to stage technology. So someone in the audience can raise their hand and everybody can see that their hand is raised. I can call them onto my broadcast, and now you're seeing their video and you're hearing them, and everybody else is seeing and hearing them. So you can have a real conversation with the QA session or the feedback session. And then at the end of the event, we call this the last feature, our mingle on feature, which is I, as the host, if I leave a virtual event, typically what ends up happening is the event shuts down. So if you're any good at digital networking, you probably have gotten into the habit of reaching out in chat and saying, hey, I really like what you said there. Let's do a one-on-one in chat, right? And here's my Calendly link, or here's my booking link. And you click that link and you schedule an appointment, and then 2 weeks later you're both looking over each other's LinkedIn and trying to figure out why the heck you wanted to talk to each other in the first place. So really the inspiration of why you wanted to have a conversation is gone, and you can't re-spark that, so you have to re-spark that another way. We believe that after event networking and connecting is quintessential and important for anybody in business or even personal relations, because that's where you make those real connections. You're inspired to talk about what you just heard or what the person said, and you engage in conversation with them. And that sometimes might last an hour and a half. That might last 2 hours. I know that I personally at a in-person event have canceled the rest of my day because my conversation was that stimulating. So we allow that to continue on. When the host leaves, everybody can continue to connect with one another until everybody's gone, and then the venue shuts itself down. So that's really the big differences between us and Zoom and Meets.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I do have the link to Mingo in the description already. So if you're listening, you can go to the website and check it. But for the user who just went there first time, how do they experience Mingo? How do they need to just log in and go to some session, or how do like new users discover all of those cool features?
Well, you can do it a couple of different ways. Right now, we just opened up what we call Mingle Moments, which is a networking event for distributed workforces, or just anybody who's distributed. It could be your family, but it's a single mingle event where you purchase the one event, you can create it, and then you get a link, and then you can invite people to that, and then everybody can join and they can cluster and they can talk with one another. You have the full functionality of the platform, but this is mainly just for that quintessential networking and connecting. It also works really well for families, so you can do it that way, or you can hit the public events and you can look at the event forum and you can see what events are happening. You can say, I'm interested in one. And I would definitely say, pick one event that you're interested in. Just say, I'm interested, and go to the event. That way you can actually experience what Mingle is like in a real world situation, instead of just, trying to open an event and get people there. And that would be the third way, is just go in there. You have a free trial when you start, so just go ahead and click create event. Create an event, make it public if you want, because then we can help you promote it and we can get people in there. And then you can just run the event. There's a lot of YouTube videos that we've created if you need to learn the functionality. Or every Thursday we have a insight into Mingle event that everybody can join, and I'll walk them through the process and actually work through their specific use cases on how to use Mingle. So lots of different ways.
Yeah, totally. And what's your pricing strategy? What's the monetization model?
So we're subscription based, but we do have those single events now. So you can either buy a single event, or you can go through and actually buy a subscription. The subscriptions go anywhere from $20 to, well, it's $19.95 or something like that, all the way up to an unlimited plan that's $150, where you can do as many mingles as you want and just run as hard as you want. So there's plenty of different tiers for whatever your taste is and whatever your need is in this situation. One of the other interesting use cases that we've run into is this after event mingle. So let's say I don't want to change my Zoom, I don't want to change my meets, I don't want to change my webinar service. I'm doing webinars on LinkedIn or wherever I'm doing webinars. I'd say run it, but open a mingle space for somebody afterwards, right? And just say, hey, we opened a mingle space for you afterwards. For anybody that wants to network, you start that up. Everybody can jump on through a link, and then once they get started, if you want to leave, you can, and then that way they can have that very important after event networking session and connection session. Those can be purchased as well. It's called our after mingle, and yeah, that's what those ones. The interesting thing on that is it opens up a space for you to essentially uh, uh, sponsor that. So let's say you find a sponsor for your event, and you say you want to sponsor our after mingle, and you can say, hey, we have our after mingle, and it's sponsored by you know by Coca-Cola or whatever you want, and then they can join, and that way they get the little things on there for that. But it's an interesting process.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. And how many years are you guys have been working on this?
Well, so the idea came about in 2020. We started development in late 21, early 22. So we've been at development for about 2 years. And we just launched in September. So, and that's our beta. We're not actually even fully launched yet. We're really just trying to test out our assumptions and also make sure that we're getting our innovative members on, the ones that love the mission of trying to connect people, and believe that that's an important mission, and they'll help us shape the future of what Mingle should be, functionality wise.
And are you bootstrapped or have you attracted some VCs money?
We've had a few look at us and show some interest, but we're bootstrapped and self funded, which is a is a beast in itself. But I believe that we're hitting that traction now, and we may stay bootstrapped if we can. I believe that the it's important that anybody who's trying to build an application, if they have the ability to bootstrap, don't give up your money. Don't give up the equity in your business if you don't have to, because capital is always going to venture capital is always going to take as much as they possibly can from you, and also they will dictate the way you run your business. That might not necessarily be a bad thing if you're getting smart money, which is somebody who understands what you're doing and can help lend a hand to make that more successful.
Mhm. Yeah, and what were the biggest problems or mistakes and lessons that you and your team have learned over those several years of working on Mingle?
That's a great question. Um, Always put everything under contract. Make sure that you're transparent, not just transparent, but you're transparent in writing. So that way you have that to always fall back on if somebody misunderstands or mishears something. You'll find that a lot of times when ideation is in place, people are brainstorming and they're running at everything and they're just super excited. And in that excitement, they forget to pause and go, okay, well, what am I getting from this? And they make up assumptions of what they're getting from it, or they hear something, or you say something in passing, and now you're at a crossroads where you're butting heads, and it's like, well, what do I owe, and what do I own of this, and what can I do with it? So I would say with your early startups, always just take the time to write out who gets what, and what's expected for that. You want to get very specific on like how many hours somebody's putting in, if they're doing sweat equity, You want to get specific on what their field is that they're responsible for. So that way, if there's ever any conflict or any issues, you can refer back to your contract. You can refer back to what's in writing and say, this is what was supposed to happen, this is what happened, and it was missed, or that kind of situation. Or you might be mistaken. You might be like, you're right, I did offer that to you, and so I'm going to make sure that I'm held accountable for what I chose to give you. The other thing I would say is vet your development team really well. Um, we had a really good team from QE Tech. They did a great job, but there were like just minor things that I would have done with a different group, like our UX UI. That didn't come out as it should have. It had some sign up issues and little things like that. And what ended up happening is when we launched our application, we ended up testing the user interface instead of the assumptions of click to cluster in our core functionality. So, we got a lot of feedback on our sign in process, and we're actually releasing a fix for that on Friday. But take that time to really make sure you dial that in, and in your alpha testing, listen to people, get their feedback, call them, ask them for their feedback. The other thing I probably would have done differently, like if an idea came to me now, is I would have followed what's called the mom test. It's a book that you can listen to on Audible. But the mom test, in summation, is this idea that how do you solicit feedback or market feedback from your mom without her lying to you? And that's because when you tell somebody, I have an idea, and you tell them what that idea is, nobody really wants to crush your ego. They're going to say, that's a great idea, oh, yeah, that's really great. And yeah, I'll totally buy it when it comes out, right? And then you're like, okay, how much would you pay for it? And they're like, oh, yeah, like $5-10, and that is not good market research. Good market research is figuring out who your target market is, and assuming your target market, go and interview them and find out what they're using now to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. Find out what they're paying. Find out how much of a pain point it actually is, and don't even bring up your idea. Those clients, a lot of people think, oh, I want to hold on to that client. I don't want to keep them as for when I launch. But the market research you get back from them without telling them your idea is far more important than them being a client later. So just interview them, find out exactly what are you doing to solve this problem now, how much of a problem is it, and how much money is it costing you to do this, to do your workaround, right? And if you can't get that, then you need to figure out what the actual target market is and move to that market. And you may not have a match, and that's actually a good thing. If you kill your ideas early, and you disprove them through market research, you don't have to get into building a team, and you don't have to get into building the application itself. So really, really fall in love with your problems, not your solution. Don't be a solution looking for a problem. And we did quite a bit of market research, but we did not do the mom test because I didn't know about it at the time. We did a lot of here's the idea we're thinking of. What do you think? And of course, we got really good feedback. But ultimately, I would have preferred to do the mom test before building the application and proving it out.
Yeah, that's a super valuable advice. Definitely agree with all of that. And did your product or the value proposition or the idea in general evolve over the years, or uh, the core value that you guys are bringing stayed the same?
I would say that the core value of connection stayed the same. So it's the concept of how important face-to-face communication is, right? So that stayed the same. I would say what's changed quite a bit is our target market. That's adjusting all the time. Our positioning is also changing all the time. How do we place ourselves in the market and position ourselves in a way that allows people to understand very quickly and purchase the product in order to generate revenue. And so when you're kind of playing around in that, it was interesting because our first target market, we thought digital networkers were going to be the thing, right? That they're the ones that are going to do it. And we went and interviewed a ton of them. And what we found out through our marketing is that people that are virtually networking, they like the tools they're using. It's not a huge pain point for them. They like the control they have in those breakout rooms. But what they are missing, and what everybody's missing in the industry, is that after event networking, the actual connecting. Because if you look at the statistics, 80% of people go to in-person events in order to meet other people. And right now in a virtual space, nobody's meeting other people really that well, the way they should be able to in the real world.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting that you said that the value, the connection stayed the same. Do you think it's because this is your team's vision and you don't want to change that no matter what? Or is it just something that you prove to yourself that it brings real value in your current implementation? So, why do you think you stayed with this vision of connection?
Oh, it's great. That's an excellent question. I mean, we've always been big on connection. We've always been big on getting people together. Before Mingle, we were working on a community corkboard application that replaced corkboards that would get people to events, and connecting, would-be sponsors and venues and talent and vendors with event production people and their audience. And so we've always kind of been in this vein of connection. And even my CEO and co-founder John Fisher, he had an application called Zing, and that's where the two I's come from. It was ZIING, and that one was all about connection as well. So I would say that we're deep rooted in the belief that through connection we lose our hatred for one another, our biases towards one another. It reminds me of the Mark Twain quote: "Is that uh, you can travel a lot because it'll get rid of your bigotry," right? Like we need to make this world a smaller place so that we all get along better. The human condition in itself, and the reason we're as advanced as we are is not because of a survival of the fittest kind of situation. It's because it's the survival of the most collaborative, the most cooperative. Uh, the reason we get this visceral response from being rejected by people is because back in caveman days, if you got rejected by your tribe, it meant death. And so it's a survival mechanism in yourself that says, "Oh, I'm being rejected, so I'm scared because I'm trying to survive and I need people to survive." And so I would say that it's probably a very big belief, but we've also seen the fruit of it. We've seen people connecting that wouldn't normally have the opportunity to connect. We've seen people from Africa talking to people in live events in Salt Lake City, Utah, and like when would they have ever made that connection, and how could they have that face to face interaction if it was just another virtual conference where they had to put their chat in? And chats are not great communication device, right? We can see that through all of the text we've been doing. We have our keyboard warriors, but everybody's kind of guilty of this, is that I might say something in text and you might be offended by that, but I don't know because you don't ever tell me. And I don't ever see the response. But if I say something to you that's offensive now, I'm going to see that in your face, and I'm going to have to experience that through my mirror neurons, right? So there's some psychology there that you need to be looking someone face to face in order to really connect with that person, because 80% of their 80% of their body language and their mannerisms is telling you is communication. And so words are a very small amount of that. So I would say that it's a little bit of both, but I would say that we're also very, very committed to bringing about a connection across the globe for all walks of life. So it's an audacious goal, but I believe it's an important one.
Mhm. Yeah, and you obviously passionately described this goal, this mission. And it's interesting because what I personally try to understand is, every company has its mission statement or some goal, some set of values. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like the goal of each business is to just make money for the shareholders.
Yeah,
And it's interesting. How do you think what role does mission play in that? Is it like in your case, it seems like it's real, it's not just for the words and marketing. But do you think like all companies have to have that, or um, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that the passion of your founders is always has a mission. It might not be well defined, but there's something that's driving them that's not uh, money related. Because the majority of your founders, the majority of your startups fail. It's not a kind business to be in. If it was all about money, most people would get into really boring things. Because guess what? Money's easy in boring things. So, for example, if you go to a music festival, you sit there and you think about who's making the most money here, right? And you might think it's the producer, but you're probably wrong. And you might think it's the talent, but you're probably wrong. The people that are making the most money are the ones who make the cases that carry the lights, or the people that make the fences that go around the perimeter, right? And it's because it's boring. Nobody else is trying to get into it. There's no passion behind it. It's just, oh yeah, I can build this, so I'll make money off of it. And so if you think about that from a startup perspective, unless you've got a giant bankroll and you're looking to make more, then it's just, and even then, I don't think you would want to get involved. You're just like, it's not interesting to me, right? You need to have that purpose or that mission in order to get you through those hard times, get you through those times where it feels like everything's falling apart. And so I would say that most companies are founded in a purposeful mission, and then as the company becomes more corporate and more repeatable, that mission kind of gets lost, right? Then you have people that are coming in and investing, and they're looking for what you're saying, money. They're just looking for a return on their investment, which is only money. They're not necessarily driven by that purpose. And so you get a lot of people involved in that. You get a lot of employees that aren't there because of the purpose. They're there because they want a job. And so once again, it's money, right? So I think as you grow, the mission becomes less important, um, unless you have a really good mission, right? Like if it's a powerful mission that people can get behind and it can drive inspiration, I believe that you can push that all the way through, and it will show to your clients, your users, the end user will feel that mission and feel that passion that you have for your product. And if you foster that purpose and that meaning in your employees and in everybody that deals with your application or with your product, I think that you can keep that inspiration, and it'll drive everything forward.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, and before we end, why don't you share the top advice with a young entrepreneur who tries to build their first company?
Well, first, don't. If you can get out of it, get
Nice.
out of
Okay,
it.
we can end the episode. That was the last advice.
No, no, I'm just kidding. Um, I understand passion. I get it. I'm one of those that have these great ideas, and I have to run with them. But I would say that the first thing is validate your market through the mom test, sell your product, and then build your product. Worst case scenario, if you sell it, you can't deliver. That's not a bad situation. Um, Worst case scenario, if you build before you sell, now you have a product that you can't sell, and now you're going out of business and you lost a bunch of money. So I think the earlier is probably a better choice. So validate your market, sell, and then build your product.
Yeah, yeah, nice advice. Okay, that's it. Thank you a lot for coming, man. It's actually the second try of our recording.
The first recording was way
Yeah.
better. If anybody's judging us, it was way better. No,
I
just
don't
joking.
know.
This is better.
I like this more. This was
Yeah,
more interesting. But yeah, thanks, man, for coming. Glad to reconnect with you, and thanks for sharing all of your ideas and story.
yeah. Thanks for having me on.